Hello and welcome. It's Aaron Jones here, the co-founder and CEO at Yepic. I'm super excited to have Tom Mason and Daniel Duma with us today to talk about the future of generative AI, focusing on their relative areas. I don't want to steal any of their thunder, so we'll get started straight away with a round of introductions.
Thanks, Aaron. Nice to meet you all. So I'm Tom. I'm CTO at Stability AI. My background is in, so I ran a tech accelerator in London for about 15 years, working on lots of different projects, and then went into a data platform for law enforcement, and then fell into Stability about 6 months ago through an open source community that I was working on developing some tooling for AI image animation and transformation, kind of video generation, and then ended up becoming CTO at Stability, where I now oversee technical strategy there and development across engineering and platform, working to bring all the models that we're developing to customers through our API and other products such as Dream Studio. So looking forward to chatting to you all, and thanks for the invite.
Hi, I'm Dr. Daniel Duma, a former NLP researcher in academia and industry with experience at Google and Alexa, the University of Edinburgh, and the Alan Turing Institute. I'm currently co-founder and CTO of several AI startups in my new life, most notably Medwise.ai, which is an assistant or search engine for clinicians, currently used by hundreds of weekly active users at the NHS and Babylon Health, mostly GPs, who use it to find immediate answers to their questions about patient care, about referrals and drug interactions, that sort of thing. And a relevant project I'm currently working on as a side gig is a detector and fact checker for AI-generated text.
That sounds super interesting. My name's Aaron Jones. I'm one of the co-founders at Yepic AI. And at Yepic, we're working on text to video algorithms, not the type that generates anything, but the type that focuses on human-centric video, video portraits. And we've been at this now for nearly 3 years. I work with an incredible team of researchers. And it's a shame that my co-founder wasn't able to make this today. In our future webinars, you'll hear a lot from Yanis, and you'll hear about the journey of developing the technology and about our vision in much greater detail. But let's kick things off. Today we're going to delve into LLMs and also image generation and touch a little bit on video generation. So it's going to be sort of like an open question format where everyone's welcome to chip in. It's more of a conversation than anything else. And I think a really helpful start would be for maybe Dan, for you to explain to us, what's an LLM? It seems, what is it? Give us an example for people that are maybe a bit less aware.
Right. Without going too much into the technical bit, we can think of it as a smart black box that, given some data in and data out, learns to predict the data out from the data in. Now, the specific thing about LLMs is they tend to do this considering the data as a sequence of elements. The sequential part is important in terms of like the relationship between the elements. So we're talking about language or code of the written word, right? It can also be used for images, like anything that you can think of as a sequential data stream. And it will learn to output also sequentially data in the same format. So you can train them partly unsupervised, as in you can just show them a bunch of data in the wild, a ton of text from the internet, or a lot of images from, say, whatever image site you want to mention. And it will learn structures. It will learn patterns. It will learn that, people are made of faces and noses and eyes. You learn that sentences have subjects and verbs and objects and that sort of thing. And this is an extremely powerful starting point that you can then easily tweak for specific tasks. And you can train these models to generate all kinds of text, all kinds of computer code, all kinds of structured data of any type. That's the best I can do, I think.
Super.
Tom, please do add or correct if any of this.
That was really good. Yeah, that was really good. No, obviously, LLMs are kind of the talk of the town at the moment, and it is incredible. I went to an event over in Munich, DLD conference a few weeks ago, and it's kind of just about tech in general, but it's amazing like how this has captured the minds of everyone. And we thought the launch of image models last year was a big thing, but this has really got into the public consciousness, and front page of every newspaper and BBC websites, and Google, share price losing, I think, $100 billion yesterday because of a wrong answer, which is just insane, completely insane. So yeah, it's pretty wild time.
It's crazy, isn't it? Like GPT reached 100 million users in 2 months, making it one of the fastest growing technology trends.
The 100 million number is highly contested and debated, not official from OpenAI. The 1 million within, 5 days or something, that one is official from OpenAI. Everything else is conjecture, so we don't know for sure. But yeah. Loads of users for sure.
It's contested. We'll take down the banner. But seriously, you guys are in the field. Is it hype? ChatGPT. If there are 100 million users, how many of those will become paying customers?
One thing that's definitely, I think that the reaction to the hype has been that there's been this sudden leap forward from ChatGPT, and I think that Jan LeCun did a tweet a couple of days ago and said, actually, look, this is not a big leap forward. This has been building up now for a few years, and GPT-3 was an incredible piece of technology, and still powers loads of services that's on top of it. And I think that OpenAI and obviously Google have had similar models like Palm and Lambda that they've been working on, and so I think the idea that this is like some spike is maybe not totally accurate, which is important, right? Because there are companies like Cohere and Anthropic, who are also doing incredible work in this space, and it's probably misleading to think of OpenAI as like the only company that's able to do this. But it's certainly they've done it. They've executed it very well. And I think I like their interfaces. They're very simple. They let the technology speak for itself, and it's interesting to see it in that format.
If I can add my own sort of slightly contrarian view on this, I would say that the big spike is on usability, on UX. Basically, is what you're saying. They've made an extremely good product that, it's a qualitative jump. It spikes that neuron in the sense that we now have a thing that understands what you're saying. I was so frustrated myself as a researcher in the chatbot space by all of these things going, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying, right? That's over, right? I think I've had that once. I think once it misunderstood what I was trying to get it to do, right? But otherwise it surprises you, it shocks you with how well it gets the intent. And I think that's the big spike. I think that's the qualitative jump. over indeed models that already existed.
At Epic, I remember we had a project with Vinci Airport Group, and they had this internal chatbot they developed for an agency. And the big vision, the big idea was, let's give the chatbot a face. So we were working on this proof of concept with them. And ultimately, the project got shelved, not because of the face or the way it was interacting. It was just that the chatbot responses were so bad. They were just so terrible that humanizing it made it seem even worse. When it didn't have a face, you could sort of like be, oh, it's just a chatbot. But when you gave it this like human likeness, it became something that you could judge, something that, you know, something that you could adore, or something that you could despise. And I think it's a really interesting trend that's happening in the product space, and like the productization of this is really interesting, because essentially ChatGPT is a product. And like, what sort of use cases do you guys think are going to like come out and really resound? Obviously Jasper AI building on GTP2 and 3.5 has been phenomenal. And I was reading the other day that like I say reading, I'm one of these Hugging Face people that goes through Hugging Face all the time and like downloads these repos and looks at the numbers and looks at how they're tracking. GTP2 had like nearly 11 million downloads in December, nearly 16 million in January. And these are developers downloading the code base to play with it. So like the interest is only growing, like you said, Tom. But like, what's going to become of this interest? Because Anthropic is doing stuff, as you said. There are lots of foundation models popping up. But like, what sort of productized use cases can you guys imagine?
Daniel, I'll let you answer.
I mean, I can only come from like a more high level view and say that anything where a human takes some kind of data into a screen, usually text, but let's say images as well, and given a task, given an objective, they generate some text out, right? Or images as well, you know, or music or whatever it is, but like it's usually text, right? All of those things are going to be first hugely augmented by these technologies, like, you know, not 10x, but like 50 or 100x, and then progressively automated away. Like that's true for copywriters and lawyers and programmers and teachers and students and customer support and like you name it. The moment you have some sort of like textual interface, you can just plug in this black box that will do the job of the human. That's my view. What do you think, Tom? Too much hype?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the RLHF component to the training of ChatGPT has been a big effort. I think there are some numbers I've heard, you know, sort of $20-30 million worth of spend on human beings, you know, answering pairwise, you know, questions, giving, you know, data to tune the model on, and that seems to be, you know, one of the big advancements, and obviously like the ability for it to do like context as well, so it can, you know, have context in the conversation, which is really important for you know, lots of different applications. But so I think, you know, I think probably the direct, you know, out of the box, it provides a, you know, a tool that can, you know, give you travel guides and you know, knowledge advice and all these things. But I think also, you know, certainly for OpenAI, I've read some things about, you know, they think one of their biggest challenges is going to be how to bring data from companies into the model, and that's a, you know, that's partly in like an infrastructure, but it's like a data privacy problem as well. This is one of the reasons that like the integration with Office is so interesting, right? Because, you know, everyone knows how bad that the search in Office 365 is. But, you know, the idea that you could use the language model to index, you know, to index company data, you know, so you've been, you know, maybe you've been having conversations with this group of people, you know, on email for the last, you know, for the last 6 months, and you can use the language model to query that and say, well, you know, what was this person talking about when I talked about this thing? And so this idea that it can be used to index text data is really interesting, I think, to make a kind of more interactive experience with company data specifically. I think that's probably what Microsoft's really interested in, and leveraging Office AI as a platform to do that through. But then just also like how do companies bring, you know, one of the biggest things with companies, and big S3 data sets is that often they can't move out of AWS, right? So they need a training system or a training stack that can be moved on premise. And that's again another interesting aspect for Microsoft with Azure, the idea that the training stack can be sitting on Azure, which is running on top of your underneath your data set, and it's something that we're focusing on quite heavily with AWS. So the training stacks need to be portable for that to happen, but instructing the model on on that kind of data and building custom like fine-tuned versions of it, I think is super powerful. Yeah,
super cool. I think for me, I have quite a different sort of idea of where this could go to both of you. I, being someone in the creative space, I see sort of LLMs as becoming more of a creative tool, a creative interface. I'm imagining a scenario where the inputs for LLMs aren't just text-based. You can draw like an outline of what you'd like to have rendered, and then sort of the model can turn this into a text prompt that another model can use to then render and create an asset. And you sort of can interact with and talk to it and sort of be like, oh, can we move the trees in the background of this video to the right? Can we please have the birds flying in a bit faster? And the birds that come towards me, can two of them look really angry? That's like an interface. I know that Professor John Colomos has done a lot of work with Adobe around this idea of like drawing an outline and like multimodal generation, sort of turning one sort of form into another using mainly GANs. But I can definitely see a future where LLMs become the sort of autoencoder, sort of alternative end-to-end generator of choice, and I'm really excited to see how this plays out. But I think that as an interface to interact with other models, this could be huge, especially when you think about coding and sort of. I've spoken to numerous people, yourself included, Dan, about building out like sort of small programs in Chat GPT, and I think that. There's bound to be more powerful tools out there. Like Copilot is arguably a more powerful tool. If the LLM becomes the interface for having a conversation with Copilot without needing to be a coder, you then all of a sudden make code more accessible to everyone.
Absolutely. I mean, this is happening for sure already. Like you can see the progress and you can see the exponentiality of it. I'm blown away by Copilot suggestions. Like every time I use it continuously now, and my job is now prompt engineer. I just have to figure out how to write the comment that will then generate the function. That's my job, and then make sure they didn't get the variables wrong, or like there's like a couple of lines that may need a bit of tweaking, but like the whole structure, all the functions that I don't even know about from that framework that I'm using, all of that will be generated for me immediately. And that's now. This is currently true, right? I don't know, in a year or two, like hopefully we'll just go and there'll be a prompt and be like, write me an app that does this and that uses these services, or maybe not even that. I want an app that's a dating app for, I don't know, fishermen.
On this sort of multimodal topic, like Tom, like sort of being from Stability, you guys are like, you changed the game for image generation in many respects. You took something that was, only really available at the time via DALL-E, via OpenAI, and you said, screw you, OpenAI. Here's a model that anyone can run anywhere that's really good quality. And I really, really like that. But like, do you think there's a future, like, at Stability for using LLMs and sort of different types of architectures to generate images and videos, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, yes. So your point about chaining is really interesting. So we are working on a language model, Open Chinchilla architecture, and we're going to be releasing that later this year. So and that the pre-training is provides the foundation for the model to then be instructed in different domains. And your concept about chaining is really interesting, and something that I think about like almost on a daily basis, because actually when people come to us and they want to work with even the image models as an example, it generally involves some kind of pipeline where the image model becomes a component of that. but not just run, from its base inference. So Jasper, Jasper is a good example of that. I've seen examples where people are, like you mentioned, chaining different LLM prompts together that may be used to generate images. So you can think about a book with pictures, with each chapter as a something that's generated by one prompt, and then you can define your whole story, which then also gets images, and you can build a whole book like that, which is a great project for someone to work on, like generating children's books and that kind of thing. And then what you end up with is this kind of program state where I one part of that and regenerate the whole flow, the whole book, and it becomes like this. And that applies, with Copilot again. Like you can see like the path to program construction, right? Where you've got, maybe you're trying to build a 3D asset that's got behavior like a car, and you've got, one code function that generates the wheels, one code function that generates the mesh of the body, and there's another code function that generates the interaction between the wheels and the suspension, and you build these things up from components that are able to be driven by a language model, and you can get to a point where you can like describe complete like behavioral assets. So that's super interesting. And again, like things like prompt, like you mentioned, prompt tuning, where the prompt is quite a daunting thing for a lot of people. Like when you first, even now, like it's like how do I explore the available space of prompt, and having an LLM do that for you, that's fine tuned on like aesthetic outputs.
Yeah.
And being able to say, well, I like an image that kind of looks like this. And there is actually there's an extension for Automatics repo, the open source wrapper around Stable Diffusion. He's got extensions that you can plug in, and there is one called Prompt Gen or something, and you can just give it some keywords, and it uses an LLM, which I think is fine tuned on something, maybe GPT-2, to output 10 variations of prompts, which you can then just pipe into the image generator. So yeah, I mean, as a framework or foundation, it's super powerful.
Absolutely. And I think this is something that we're looking at a lot at YEPIC. I bring it up because we're thinking about this a lot in our research meetings. And for us, we see ourselves less as the company that builds the LLM orchestration layer, and more as the company that builds the best building bricks for video generation, the best building brick for rapid avatar creation. And like so I don't want to go into pitching mode for our business, but like I think one of the key things that makes Copilot so incredible is that Copilot's instant. The thing that makes Stability so incredible is that you can instantly see an image, and you can highlight an area, and you can re-render, and it's an interactive process. This is why Premiere is, imagine a video editing tool where the process wasn't fast, where you had to wait like 20 minutes for a video to render. It would be, it would be a really bad experience. Like being able to preview things really fast, I think, is the key to unlocking this next level of creativity. And that for us is the goal at YEPIC, to build ultra fast models that work near real time, if not real time, that can be sort of scaled. We don't have the same help the universe ambitions that you guys have at Stability. But I think that it really does help the universe. We don't have the open source ethos that you guys have in the same way. Yeah. But yeah.
No, the response time is really important, and that I guess early on, that because I remember like 12 months ago I was working on Disco Diffusion, which is this like open source GAN clip guided diffusion type
I remember Disco Diffusion
notebook and everything. And if you're generating images at sort of 1024 or 1280, you're looking at like 5 minutes to generate an image. And I remember renting A100s on Lambda Labs for like an evening, right, just so you could generate a 10-second clip or 20-second clip. So the response time, like going to Stable Diffusion, where it was like I think 5 or 6 seconds on an A40 or even faster on A100 was just like a kind of just a paradigm shift. But actually, it's still pretty slow. Like if you look at like interactive applications, like Copilot or Copilot's a good example where you need it as you type. And image generation is really interesting. Like if you look at things like in painting, when you're in painting part of an image, right now the mental process is that you're masking and then you're regenerating basically that whole 512 space with something masked. Whereas actually, and the reason for that is because, the model is generating images in a certain resolution, and that's just the way that it's been conditioned. But actually, you can see a process where, you start in painting at the brush level, and the response time becomes so quick that, you're basically like a proper content aware fill tool using like image generation. And for that, you need to have the model be able to be faster, and there are like this like distillation techniques that we're working on, better compilation techniques of the model, and I think we can get it down. We'll definitely get it down to like way under a second, but there's a few things that need to happen. But that there's definitely a few people in the company that are really excited about how to make the model be more reactive at lower response times and in different smaller resolutions, which is kind of interesting.
You mentioned renting an A100 card. Obviously A100 cards, like to rent well from Azure, I know is $27 an hour. So like how does that play into a business model for sort of for companies that at some point need to start to monetize this technology if they aren't already?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was looking at Lambda Labs yesterday because they've always had. I'm not pitching Lambda Labs, have no affiliation with them, but they've got on-demand instances for A100 now for $1.10 an hour, which is incredible. And there's some downsides, like you can't customize. There's a few things you can't customize about the CUDA stack and stuff. But actually, that's probably a good thing for most developers. We all know what it's like to get stuck in like CUDA hell. So yeah, like I mean, but with companies like AWS, you've got to commit to like multi-year periods to get the price down. And luckily, our founder made a big strategic call and went out and did this partnership with Amazon and set up a lot of I mean, the cluster's pretty big. It's now 4,000 A100s, which are in groups of 8. So it's the A108. And it's an eye-watering like billing figure, but and it's only going to have to get bigger. Right? Like the H100s this year, I think the H100s are depending on which metric you use, are kind of 3 to 6 times faster, and video models coming along. Yeah, I mean the compute is definitely like the kind of lowest part of the whole equation. But it is expensive. I mean, again, your question. I mean, how do companies get into it? I think people have to invest in compute, right? That's just you want to train big models, but there's lots of optimizations. There's companies like Colossal AI who managed to get a 6x improvement on Stable Diffusion training just through a bunch of things like Xformers and other optimization techniques. So I think we'll see the training time come down a lot.
What would you say to an investor that was worried about making a bet in generative AI for this reason? Like it's a great reference there with Colossal, but like there's obviously massive improvements are being made all the time, but like there's a lot of talk right now in the investor community about trying to find the next Stability, the next OpenAI. But there's also a lot of reservation around the compute cost and the access to compute, because if tomorrow night you become a sensation and you have like Lensa style numbers and you start, you do like $37 million after paying App Store fees in 60 days, then where do you get the compute from? Because trying to get A100 cars right now is tricky at scale. And it's brilliant that Imaz had the foresight to sort of do the deal that you guys have done. But for someone starting out, what would your advice be? And what would you say to investors that were like, worried about that? Sorry,
I mean,
very broad question.
Yeah, no, I mean, like the for foundation models, there's obviously a barrier to entry on the compute costs. It's actually something that comes up in the context of like custom model tuning, because like we're continually trying to train new versions of things like Stable Diffusion, and a question we get quite a lot is, why would I bring my custom data to the model and train it now if you're going to have a brand new architecture in 3 months time that's better, right? Because I'm going to have to fine tune my model again. And if that's, if you're fine tuning on 10 million or 100 million images, that's not an insignificant cost. However, the image problem is getting very close to being solved. Like the models are so good now, and you've got models like Muse from Google. We've got a couple of new architectures coming out, and I think we feel like by the end of this year, image models are going to be in a state where you get what you ask for, and it's always good. You haven't got to cherry pick results. You get coherent, consistent result. So at that point, if you're building on top of the foundation model, then I think it's time to dive in, right? That idea that you should hold back because the landscape's still evolving doesn't make sense anymore. But for sure, like working on the foundation models, the approach that we take really is that we obviously like working with various different open source communities, but there are I think all of the open source models that I can think of that we're working with come along because papers get published and the code isn't published, but the technique is, and there are a lot of people in the industry working on converting those papers into open source code. I mean, DALL-E 2 has been reverse engineered.
That could be interesting as an LLM that takes a research paper and builds the code. Like our team has spent so much time over the past few years trying to reconstruct papers to test the results, because like I said, very often the code isn't published, and people make outlandish claims in their papers about the improvement, and they'll benchmark on a picture of Barack Obama, but you use a different picture of Barack Obama and the result is nowhere near the cherry picked results that you see. So that could be huge. That could be gigantic.
Yeah, so there's obviously a huge potential out there for just monitoring Arxiv and just looking at these new ways of making models more efficient and optimal. But I think there's definitely something that became apparent to me was just how much can be gained or learnt from being part of open source communities. I mean, these groups on Discord like Eluther and Carper and image model groups, Lion, they've got, I think Lion's now got 70 or 80,000 people in it, and you can just go and sit on channels and just listen to people talking about developing these models, and it's a really good way of learning about
these communities. Like obviously you've been in this space for such a long time, and Dan, you've also been in the developer space for a long time. Like what is it like to build a community in this space? And at Stability now, what do you do to support these communities, to support the open source community? Maybe Dan, if you do, you want to share anything first?
I think Tom has should have the floor on this one.
Yeah. I've talked too much. Dan, you go for it.
Well, the specific question, I think you would have way more to say about it. I mean, community building is always important to any product that you're building, right? I've found this out myself, but particularly in the when you're building for developers, I think that's key more than anywhere else, right? Because developers are so finicky and such an in crowd. So I pass it on to Tom. He'll have way more interesting things to say than I.
Yeah, look, it's just I guess it's just cohesion is something that it's amazing like how organic open source communities are. I find and completely disorganized, most of them, which is wonderful, because it's that complete antithesis of like corporate mentality. And I think that's really attractive when you just want to hack on things and build stuff and generally mess around until things work and you come up with something that it's really actually, like groundbreaking. And so what was your question? I've completely forgotten your question.
It was sort of like partly about, how do you build these communities? You've been in them for a long time, and obviously they're huge and they're popping up everywhere, and they're very, very big. Our goal by the end of the year is to grow a community of 200,000 developers that are sort of interacting with our open source models that we're about to release. And like I tell people this number, and it seems like an incredibly large number, but if the community grows and it works, it's not that big. But like I know that I'm sort of giving you a chance to plug the program you have at Stability here as well, like the support program that you offer to these really exciting projects that are popping up that are in a similar adjacent space to you.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of forming them, all I know is that when you've got it can just be a few people. It could be 2 or 3 people that have a idea that they want to try and work on together. And in places like Discord, that can be really visible, like just a spark happening, and it's very contagious. Like people will come and join, and you get this kind of process of improvement and collaboration that I've never seen that happening in other environments. So just having a few good people like really pushing for something they believe in is like, I think, how you form a community. And then so yeah, stability. But I mean, all that we really did, Emad's main focus at the beginning was just looking for those communities and trying to offer them compute. So we have a research grant application. You can apply on the website, and you can, if you've got a model you're training and you've got data and an idea, you can just apply for that. And we give out loads of time on the cluster for research projects, and that's how kind of Stable Diffusion came about, actually. And things like GBT Neo X and OpenClick from Lion, almost all of the kind of foundation models that we started, and again, they're models that belong to the community, really, which is why they get released back to open source. So yeah, if anyone's interested, it's obviously always there as an option.
Super. I know, Dan, you've had a lot of experience as well building out the community on Discord. So I remember you were telling me, sort of a year ago now, wasn't it, the project that you were running? I know it's sort of like it was just a one-off project, but how big was the community that you grew?
I think we topped out at 20,000 people or so. This was over the space of about 5 months. This was not an AI community. This was NFTs, this was Web3/crypto. And in that space, particularly, like, this is the bit that I can maybe add something to. In that space, community is literally everything. It's all about hanging out. It's all about identity. It's all about signaling belonging to a group that you want to belong to, that sort of thing. And NFTs are the token that makes you a member of that group. And so it was interesting because as a kid, I was stuck at home on the internet. I had that experience of the early days of the internet, the almost BBS style, like IRC forums, before Reddit, before Google, before Facebook, right? And there was this feeling to that time. It was all new, it was all fresh, and you had this freedom online, and it was all about finding people who were like-minded, through these appalling interfaces of IRC, alt text and stuff. And we're back to that. It's like I'm seeing this as a new wave of exactly that in a new space. It's like the normie internet is now saturated and it's owned by big corporates, and we're all a bit tired of it. Basically, it's not cool anymore. Like your aunt is on it, your racist aunt is on it. So what do? You find a new place to escape to, a new frontier, and you create a new community there. You find again these like-minded people. It's just now it's through the lens of crypto. So it's all about money now. Like the difference is now everything's tokens and everything is aping into things and hodling and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, the community spirit is the same, right? It's like people look for a community to belong to feel human, I think, even, through the lens of technology.
And on this idea of feeling human, like obviously AI and this type of generative technology has this incredible ability to connect people through visual and to share ideas. But like, where do you think the risks are in sort of generative AI? We mentioned jobs earlier, some jobs being displaced, but like, this is a question that always comes up in these webinars. So it's good to get like a balanced view as well. It can't all be good. So I'd love to hear, like, what the best, what one of the best outcomes would be for humanity, and what one of the worst outcomes would be for humanity. Maybe we can all just quickly share our best and worst.
Best and worst. Best and worst. Well, look, if it augments our ability in a positive way, then that's fantastic. If it makes us able to be, to be more creative, to be more productive, then that's what I see as happening. And it's a tool, and it's something that augments our abilities. What's the worst thing? I suppose the worst thing is that and this is something that, Daniel, I know you worked on, but trust and how do we trust it, especially like generative models. It's fine for images to be wrong, right? But if text models are wrong, then I guess that's pretty dangerous.
Absolutely. From my side, I would say the worst thing is going to be the end of all jobs, and the best thing is going to be the end of all jobs, because most jobs should not exist. Probably all jobs. No jobs should exist. So it's both a risk and an opportunity, right? So on the one hand, we'll definitely see a lot of, how shall I say, like the kind of jobs that will let you, rise up the ranks, climb the ladder, into the middle class sort of thing. All of those are gone, right? All of those are knowledge jobs, and I see them gone within the next 5 to 10 years, right? I have no doubts that most work that lawyers do should not be done. Most work that programmers do should not be done, right? So of course, some will remain, the more expert ones will remain managing the AI, right? But I just like all the juniors are out, that sort of thing. So I actually think that's great. If that job doesn't need to be done, then we shouldn't be doing it, right? Now, the only problem there, and this is a thing that I spent probably too much time thinking about, is purpose. What is the point of humans? Why do we exist? What do we do? What's our, thing? And we'll have to all figure this out. Like, we'll have to find purpose elsewhere that is not in, well, I'm useful to society because I do this thing, because that will be gone. So we'll have to find other ways of being useful to society.
Maybe it will make us more human. Maybe the communities that we have, and this strong trend of developers belonging to communities, and it's already happening in the secular internet, with the sort of Facebook groups, and I'm part of quite a few marketing groups, and people are prolific. Every day you have the same characters, like sharing new things they found and telling people what's good and what's bad. And I do think that there's a huge opportunity for job loss, but I think the more likely outcome is that, like Tom said, we all become more creative, and I think that this type of technology has the ability to sort of pilot us closer to the sun, but you don't want to fly too close to the sun. We know what happened to Icarus. And I think that the possibilities are sort of endless. And I think that LLMs and other systems being used in a chained way will continue to evolve. And I think in the short term, there'll be more jobs created. And then it's not until maybe 10, 20 years time that we start to see decline, when there's more trust, more widely, and when we start to optimize things. But I think that the next 10 years will be, the golden years. Everyone thought robotics were going to get rid of all the fulfillment jobs. 2/3 of Amazon's workforce are fulfillment center workers. Like they ship more packages now than they ever possibly could have if they hired at the same rate. I see the same happening with AI, but at a more rapid rate. I think film directors will be able to produce films quicker. I think artists will be able to output more unique work, and technology like ours and sort of new text to video algorithms will be able to bring things to life in a new creative way that isn't possible today, or in a way that would take a VFX artist weeks, if not months, of painstaking work in a computer program to make this happen. And I think on that point, that the last thing I have here to discuss is sort of text to video. This is one of the next frontiers, I guess. When I talk about text to video, I mean generalist, not like Yepic's make a face talk, but like give me a video of Tom Mason doing a hopscotch and then jumping into a quantum computer and ending up in space. You know, this type of creative expression that you can't really achieve. Like, what have you guys seen out there? Like, I'd love to just,
it's already been done. At literally a paper that came out like 5 days ago. Like, they've done it. It works.
Which paper? For the audience at home, for people watching.
Tom, do you remember the title?
There's a couple. There's Make a Video, which I think was by Facebook, I believe, or Meta. Then NVIDIA have got one. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then there's NVIDIA have got one. So video diffusion models. Learning on sequences of images. Being able to generalize and then regenerate. There's Make a Video.studio is the one from Meta, which has got some nice examples, and it's super exciting. I mean, animation is kind of what got me into this whole thing, and we've got there are models we've got for animation of static environments using 3D translation, which are really interesting and but have some temporal coherence issues, and these video diffusion models kind of solve that problem by understanding how sequences of images evolve and somehow supposedly getting understandings and representations of physics in videos, which is amazing. So seeing these, I think we can expect to have short form video creation like in the hands of the public probably pretty soon, right, in the next 3-4 months, and then you can look at interpolating those together. So jumping around latent space from different scenes in a longer video, which just goes straight into what you were talking about, like film. Filmmakers being able to at least storyboard films in a video environment, and obviously quality will just get better and better and better. But it's gonna be super exciting, and making marketing videos and all this kind of thing is going to take on a completely new world.
Absolutely.
So we're working on it hard.
And like model wise, did you guys see the TikTok paper that came out? The text to video paper from TikTok?
Yeah.
That was a particularly interesting one. I'll share a reference for everyone to see just now, but yeah, like it blew my mind. But they did talk quite a bit about the temporal problem with diffusion models, and you talk about like sort of overcoming that through more training. But then, like obviously, you can only hold so much in memory at any one time. I think this is where GANs were quite good because you could have a memory unit, an adaptive memory unit that you added onto a GAN that could like sort of keep like the frames before and after as it was training. Like is a similar approach happening in Stable Diffusion?
There is someone, it's a researcher from NVIDIA who has managed something, I think it's called StyleGAN T, and he's managed to generalize StyleGANs to produce video and animation, which is super cool. And then it's just a different architecture. So like the current animation techniques just involve 3D translation. So you have to diffuse to get new content in. But traditional image models like Stable Diffusion don't understand about how arms move and things. They don't, they're not trained on that kind of sliding window of data. Whereas the new architectures are done on exactly on that. So they're trained on sequences. You can imagine things like GIFs being able to, animated GIFs being like the first use case, animated GIF meme generators and so on. So yeah, I'm sure we'll see lots of different architectures being developed for it. But yeah, that's going to be my biggest, most exciting thing this year, probably. Looking forward to it.
But for us too at Epic, it's definitely the most exciting thing that's coming, and it feeds into so much of like what we're trying to do with developers in the future. Like I said, we're a very different business. We focus on facial video, but like I think the thing with StyleGAN with the StyleGAN V that really internalize across faces also. If you look at their reference videos, there's some artifacting, and like the lip sync isn't that good, but they've managed to build a model that's big enough and general enough to cover a really broad set of use cases. Which, like, imagine a few years in the future, you're a Hollywood film studio, or you're a film student, and you want to have a crowd scene, and you don't want to hire extras, and you don't want to hire a VFX studio at Pinewood. All of a sudden, you can generate the crowd. I think there's always going to be a need for people. But I read some stat in some Gartner report the other day saying that like by 2024 they expect their first, I think it was 2024, their first full feature film to be generated using AI from start to finish. Do you think that like things are actually moving that fast, that as early as like end of next year we could see a full feature film generated?
Yeah, I think that's easily achievable. This year maybe, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, because you can, you only have to generate 3 seconds of video before you can see how you would chain them together, with interpolation to achieve a longer frame. Without a doubt, I think we'll see it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree. But I was hoping someone would say no. Do you want to say no, Dan?
I am very excited that Tom said yes. I don't follow that progress that closely, and it's really exciting to see how quickly we're moving. It's insane though. Like, just think about it. You're saying, video, whatever, producers, directors, etc. Well, you're thinking about professionals, right? People have already been doing this with, harsher tools, with blockier things, and now they can actually have a lot more control. It's easier, it's faster, the iteration is better. But imagine just the general public. Like, everyone can be a director, everyone can make their own films, etc., etc. And then the next thing will be video games. Then the metaverse. We'll each create our own fantasies and live in them, right? And it's happening now. It's happening in the next few years.
It is happening right now. Any company building that right now, that's going to be an exciting year for them. So, guys, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I think this is a good point, a good high point to end on. That we're going to have our first full feature film possibly this year, according to Tom Mason.
We'll check your prediction.
Let's check back in a year and see if it was done this year.
If not, I'll just spend the rest of the year trying to make it, just so it happens.
Well,
awesome. Thanks for the chat. Good to see you guys.
See you soon. Take care. Thanks, Tom.
Cheers. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Yes, thanks, Dan.